Good evening. I'm Haylee Ficuciello, Senior Correspondent for Englebrook Independent News. Tonight's commentary is titled, Where's the Maryland Dad Today? The Saga of Kilmar Abrego-Garcia. Ah, yes. Remember the media's favorite Maryland Dad? The man presented to the American public as the second coming of Ward Cleaver, just unfairly targeted by the evil Trump administration. For weeks, corporate media outlets, Democratic lawmakers, celebrity activists, immigration groups, and social media influencers practically built an entire political movement around Kilmar Abrego-Garcia. According to them, he was simply a peaceful family man swept under into some cruel immigration dagnate. But then came the awkward details, and suddenly the loudest people in the room grew very quiet. Funny how that works. Let's walk through this chronologically. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Salvadorian national illegally entering the United States around 2011. Years later, he settled in Maryland. In 2019, immigration proceedings began after law enforcement identified him as allegedly having ties to the violent transnational gang MS-13. Now, Democrats and activist groups insisted the gang allegations were weak, disrupt, or based on questionable intelligence. And to be fair, Abrego Garcia has denied being a member of MS-13. But here's the part conveniently ignored by the media circus. Federal authorities and local law enforcement repeatedly referenced suspect gang affiliation during immigration proceedings. The allegations did not appear out of thin air. Investigators claimed confidential informants identified him as connected to MS-13, one of the most violent criminal organizations operating in the United States and Central America. You know, the same gang famous for machete murders, extortion, drug trafficking, intimidation, and human smuggling. But apparently, questions whether an alleged MS-13 associate should remain in the country is now considered extremist by the cable network panels. Incredible! Despite those concerns, an immigration judge in 2019 granted Abrego Garcia protection from deportation back to El Salvador because of his fear he could be facing violence there. That protection became the center of the massive legal and political battle after Trump administration later deported him to El Salvador during a broader crackdown on alleged gang members and illegal immigration. The administration later admitted that deportation was an administration error. And that's when Democrats saw the opportunity. Not a tragedy, an opportunity. Suddenly, Abrego Garcia became the poster child of anti-Trump resistant movement. Among the most prominent Democratic publicity defending or activating on behalf of Abrego Garcia were Senate Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, who traveled to El Salvador and publicly pushed him for his return. Multiple congressional Democrats who accused Trump administration of violating constitutional right and due process. Progressive immigration activists and aligned lawmakers who repeatedly referred to him as an exclusively Maryland father. Left-leaning media commentators who framed the case as proof of Trump-era immigration enforcement was authoritarian. The phrase Maryland Dad became a media branding campaign. But apparently, illegal immigration with alleged MS-13 ties facing federal scrutiny just didn't pull as well. But then more information started surfacing, and that's when the storyline began to fall apart. Court records later resurfaced involving a restraining order filed by Abrego Garcia's wife. According to the file, she allegedly that he punched her, scratched her, ripped her shirt, and left her with bruises all over her body. Now later reports indicate couple attempted reconciliation and moved forward with counseling. But let's pause for a moment. For weeks, Americans were lectured that questioning this man's background was somehow hateful. Yet suddenly, allegations involving domestic violence emerged from the very people telling us he was simply an innocent man. And still, silence from many of the same activists. No emotional press conference, no celebrity hashtags, no MSNBC special entitled Believe Women Unless It's Politically Inconvenient. Then came another bombshell. Authorities revealed details involving a 2022 traffic stop in Tennessee. According to federal reports, Abrego Garcia was stopped while transporting multiple passengers across state lines. Officers reportedly became suspicious of potential human trafficking or human smuggling, actively after observing several indicators involving numerous passengers, inconsistent explanation, and little to no luggage despite extensive travel. No immediate trafficking charges were filed at the time, but federal investigators later revisited the incident. And eventually, prosecutors in the Middle District of Tennessee charged Abrego-Garcia with alleged participation in unlawful transportation of illegal immigrants for financial gain. Federal prosecutors later alleged he may have been participating in a large smuggling operation spanning years. Abrego-Garcia pled not guilty, and under the American legal system, he remains presumed innocent unless proven guilty in the court of law. But once again, where did all the Maryland dad branding suddenly disappear to? Funny. The moment the story became complicated, the political marketing campaigns started collapsing. Because the truth is, this case was never just about immigration, it was about political theater. Democrats attempted to use Abrego Garcia as a weapon against Donald Trump's immigration agenda. Cable news transformed him into a symbol. Social media activists treated him like a civil rights icon. And meanwhile, millions of Americans sitting at home were asking a very basic question. Why are we consistently being told to ignore red flags? Why does every immigration controversy instantly become a morality play where border enforcement is evil and scrutiny itself becomes taboo? And perhaps most importantly, how many times are Americans expected to hear the phrase, there's nothing to see here, before the next ugly detail emerges? Now, let's be very clear. Every person in the United States, citizen or non citizen, deserves due process under the law. The principle matters. If the government violates legal procedures, court absolutely has a role in correcting those mistakes. But respecting due process does not require the public to ignore allegations involving gangs, domestic violence accusations, or suspected human smuggling. Those things matter too. And Americans are increasingly tired of being told they are bad people for noticing. The broader issue here is trust. For years, many of Americans have watched political leaders selectively present facts depending on what narrative benefits the most. When details hurt the preferred storyline, suddenly everything becomes complicated, contextual, or misunderstood. And when the goal is attacking Donald Trump, every headline becomes DEFCON 1. Every deportation becomes the end of democracy. Every immigration case becomes Broadway production. And every questionable figure somehow becomes just a hardworking family man. Until they aren't. Today, Kilmar Abrego-Garcia remains at the center of federal proceedings, immigration dispute, and political controversy. His legal fate will ultimately be decided in court, but politically, the case already exposes something much larger. It reveals how quickly activists, media personalities, and Democratic politicians rush to build narratives before all facts are known. And now the same people who couldn't stop talking about Maryland Dad seems awfully difficult to find. Maybe they're busy looking for the next symbol, the next hashtag, the next carefully packaged media storyline. Because in modern American politics, facts often arrive long after talking points. I'm Haylee Ficuciello for Englebrook Independent News.